Hey, sports fans, PBZ Sports Chaos. And you know what time it is? It's football championship weekend. And we'll get into that momentarily. But I got a shout out. As you see, I'm representing here the best hockey team in the NHL, the best basketball team in the NBA right now. And by the way, the Bruins, PB, as you know, you're a hockey fan, they're on an epic pace. And they have 6 losses right now, and we're almost to February. That's unheard of. They're on pace for 64 wins, 137 points, all-time records in the NHL, right?
Right, exactly. And one of those losses was just the last game they played in Tampa.
Yeah,
so.
to the Lightning. And by the way, shout out to you. I don't know if I picked them to make the playoffs. You did for sure. And I think maybe I did, but I didn't have an advance into any round but the first, and they got out. I think you had them going at least one round.
Yeah. I mean, it's
epic the way they're performing. I mean, Jim Montgomery is easily the coach of the year.
Yeah. The only thing is, and we say this all the time, when the regular season ends in hockey, it's a brand new season. It doesn't matter where you finish, really. We know the history of the President's Cup winners, where they end up, right? Florida did it last year. Florida won the President's Cup. They were gone in the second round. So it's kind of a jinx, you know?
It is a jinx. No, I know. Hey, by the way, the Celtics play the Lakers tonight. And, everybody says that's the greatest rivalry. Personally, for me, the greatest rivalry for the Celtics is the Sixers because they play them more regularly. They play the Lakers only twice a year. If they get to the championship, then they play, right? In which they play more than anybody else in the championship. But
they go back. They're going back to the 80s and stuff. And that's where that rivalry really came from, right?
But still, it was only in the finals, really, because like I said, you play twice a year in the interconference. So, hey, I got to ask you a question before we get to football because we're going to talk a lot of football right now. Scott Rowland makes the Hall of Fame in baseball. You know what? Good player. I know he's an 8-time All-Star, 7-time Gold Glove, or vice versa. And he was Rookie of the Year, but I never really considered him a Hall of Fame player. Did you?
No, and the fact that you just mentioned his name, I was just like, oh, I remember that guy. Like, as if he was just some random third baseman. You know what I mean?
I mean, he was a very solid third baseman, but he's not Brooks Robinson, George Brett, or anybody like that, right?
I'll give you another third baseman. Do tell me if he's in the Hall of Fame or not. That just came to my mind, too, around that time, maybe a little bit earlier. Andres Galarraga. Did he ever make the Hall of Fame?
No, he's not in.
I would say Andres Galarraga, to me, watching baseball, not growing up, but, in our, adult years, he sticks out to me as a better third baseman than Scott Rowland ever was.
Well, I got one for you. He's coming up next year. Adrian Beltre.
There's another one. Right? He had a little stint with the Red Sox, too, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, Rowland's solid. Obviously, 8 Gold Gloves, 7 All-Stars, or whatever it was, vice versa. And Rookie of the Year. But he never led any year statistically in any category. Never once. So, he's not a flashy player in my mind. And I don't mean you have to be a flashy player to be in the Hall of Fame. Yaz wasn't flashy. He's just a Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. We move on. All right. Hey, football news. Pats bring back Bill O'Brien as OC. Good move?
Well, it's better than what they have now. So in that regard, I guess you can't do worse. So I guess it's a good move. I mean,
I think it's a great move. I think Bill O'Brien is a really, really good coach. People criticize him because he took the Texans to the playoffs 4 times. He's a good coach. He also resurrected Penn State when the whole Joe Paterno thing came down and everything, all that stuff. And everybody's like down on Penn State. Yep. He got them back to a winning team. I think he's a really good coach. I know he's fiery. I know we saw him and Brady fight on the sidelines, kind of, right, and stuff like that.
Well, so that's the thing he brings to the table is he's going to be the OC, but he's also really good with quarterbacks, right? So I think it's a good positive for Mac Jones and kind of set him straight and get his head in the right space.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Hey, by the way, here's a shocker. All the head coaches hired so far, Frank Reich goes to Carolina. Everybody says Frank Reich's a quarterback whisperer. I think he's a quarterback killer myself, quite frankly. I really do. Phillip Rivers, Matty Ice, who should have been a Hall of Fame, still maybe, but the way he handled him this year killed him. And Carson Wentz, I know you don't like Carson Wentz. Apparently Carson Wentz and him played well together one time in Philadelphia for about 11 games, but I don't think he's the quarterback whisperer, so good luck in it. And by the way, it's going to get ugly because Steve Wilkes deserved the job, and now we got this whole nightmare. We've got the Brian Flores, now we got this one with Steve Wilkes, David Culley. And NFL's got a problem on their hands. That's all I'm going to say, right?
We'll see. Could be.
Oh, man. All right. Hey, by the way, the other thing I'm happy about, my Cowboys, Dan Quinn is staying as DC. People wanted him as a head coach. He's staying. He must have a very, very lucrative offer from Jerry in the background when Mike McCarthy finally really, really screws up, right?
You would think. You would think.
And Kellen Moore should be gone, but I'm going to wait till another time. All right, let's get into the football playoffs. Last week, in my opinion, you'll probably have a different opinion, but the most impressive win was the Eagles over the Giants, 38-7, in what was in a second round playoff game was a complete obliviation, and it could have been 56-7, but they took the foot off the gas pedal. The Eagles were very impressive on both sides of the ball last week, and you could say the Giants are so-so. They won 10 games, so I don't know. What do you think? What was your most impressive win?
Well, I mean, I'm going to go with that one for a minute here, because I really think that the Eagles, and G Money pointed this out too, their strength of schedule wasn't really there. They didn't face these, high-powered teams. Obviously, they had to play the Cowboys twice in the regular season.
Here's what I'm going to say to you guys right now. I'm going to stop you. You play the games on your schedule. And as Herm Edwards likes to say, you play to win the game. So it's not like college where you can set up powder puffs and win those games at the beginning of the year like Alabama does, right?
I agree.
They played the schedule. What are they going to do? They played the schedule.
But you got to get challenged in certain areas that they may haven't been challenged yet in, right? So, that there's an argument to be made that the Giants were one of the weaker teams entering the playoffs, right? They went on the road and beat what many people were considering Minnesota to be a joke to begin with. I know we both picked them. We thought they could take care of the Giants. But the Giants that's not a test. That's not a true test of playing a good team. If the Eagles go ahead and beat the Niners and then beat the winner of the Chiefs and Bengals, I will tip my hat to the Eagles. I just don't think it's going to happen.
I'll say one thing. Above average teams play down to the opponents. Great teams dismantled the opponents. Philadelphia dismantled the opponent. That's all I'm going to say.
They did. So, that was an impressive game. I think Cincinnati going into Buffalo last week in the snow with the whole DeMar thing and all the emotional aspects of that game, that Cincinnati just tuned out and they just played football, and they put a beat down on Buffalo. I know the game wasn't as, the score wasn't as big as it could have been, but was it 27-10 was the final? That they could have. I will say this. The difference in that game was Von Miller couldn't play. There's a reason why Buffalo went out there and moved heaven and earth to get Von Miller, and unfortunately couldn't play because Von Miller would have been a difference maker in that game, in my opinion. They couldn't rush the passer. I mean, but it's a known fact. Buffalo has no pass rushes. They had to get Von Miller. They did. They had a great season when he played. He didn't play. They didn't win, right? So there you go. And you thought there was some vulnerability there on the offensive line for Cincinnati that they could have exploited. But let's give credit to the offensive line, too, because they did play a decent game.
No, they did. Hats off to them. I think, though, that, and we'll talk about them second. We'll talk the Philly game first, because that's the first one up on Sunday. I'll just say this. I think Cincy's run their mouth a little too much. Burrowhead Stadium, big mistake there. There's no guy in the NFL, in my opinion, that takes being insulted more than Patrick Mahomes and gets motivated by it. So we'll talk about that.
But wait, no, let's say he is a little cocky. I'll give you that, Joe Burrow, for sure. But let's talk about the other classic quarterback in this league now who didn't win last week, who has a great future ahead of him, and that's Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. I said that to you a few weeks ago.
Yeah, they played a really good game against Kansas City in Kansas City. They gave him a run for their money. He's just a class act, and I think
if you give Trevor one stud receiver like Philly got for Hurst this year and A.J. Brown, you give him one stud receiver, that team's a 12-win team.
Yeah, and their defense
one is stud receiver.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this game, the first one. So San Fran playing a noontime game for them at Philadelphia at 3 o'clock. Philadelphia, by the way, as you know, you've been there, you know those fans. It's clearly the 12th man in the NFL is the Philadelphia fans, because they're the most disgusting, obnoxious, arrogant, putrid fans in the world. And they're going to be riled up. And the 3 o'clock game gives them enough time to get shit-faced, so they're going to be very much vulgar, right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge home game favorite.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that and not me, because I have a lot of fans out there from Philly. So you saved me the pain of that. So thank you, Z, for doing that.
No, I
And you're
know. I've
right.
been to some Villanova games.
And you're right too, because in some instances, like when a Buffalo plays a Cincinnati, let's say for example, people can just get in their car, they can get tickets, they can drive, whatever. When you have to go all the way across the country to see the team play, that cuts down on the fans that will make the trip from San Francisco to Philly. So I just think that you're not going to see many San Francisco fans there this weekend.
All right, so let's get it real quick. Who do you like in that, and then we'll talk about why.
This is a tough game to pick, and I've gone back and forth. But at the end of the day, I'm going to take the Niners, and here's my reason why.
Okay,
I think Philadelphia is more dependent on Jalen Hurts than San Francisco is on Brock Purdy, and basically what that means is just the weapons, the weapons that are around. There's other people that can take the game into their hands, like a Christian McCaffrey, like a Deebo Samuel, like a George Kittle. So there's other people, and we know the dominance of the team's offensive and defensive lines too, right? So Trent Williams can really put a stop to this pass rush of Philadelphia as well. So I think that for that reason, I'm taking San Francisco. I know they're, I think, a 2.5-point underdog, so I'm going to take them not only with the points, but I'm also going to take them straight up to beat Philadelphia and go to the Super Bowl.
So, PB, here's what I have to say to you on this, right? All right, first of all, Philadelphia's pass rush does not rely on one guy, unlike San Fran, who relies on Bozer only, really, to get their pass rush. They've got 4 guys in double digits in sacks. By the way, they get 75 sacks in the year. San Fran's only got 44, talking about their awesome defense. So 75 sacks on the year. That's an unbelievable statistic with 4 guys double digits. The other thing is, Philadelphia, for all this year, we've been saying that they have the best offensive line in football. So as good as Trent Williams is, he's one guy on San Fran's side. They got 5 guys that are legitimately all pro players on the Philadelphia side of that game. Yes, you're right about Jalen Hurts. The game revolves around him, but it revolves around him for one reason, because he's a point guard. He can keep the ball. He can dish the ball. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I like that. The other thing is this. Philadelphia, they've put 14 times this year, they've jumped up to double-digit leads in the game. If you go to a double-digit lead in the game, right, that means the other opponent has to be passing. If the opponent's passing, 75 pass rushes comes into the equation, right? At the end of the day, against a rookie quarterback. Hey, Brock Purdy's awesome. I love Brock Purdy. I watched him play that Oklahoma game, Iowa State, Oklahoma, that 42-41 epic game 3 years ago. He's a great year. He should be the rookie year, in my opinion. But at one point in time, he's going to play like a rookie. I hate to say it. And if he gets down double digits.
Yeah, and you're right. If the game goes that way, then yes, Philadelphia all of a sudden has the advantage. In my analysis, I think Brock Purdy has to throw the ball 18 to 22, 23, like in that range times in this game. If he has to throw the ball 30, 35 times, yes, now all of a sudden Philadelphia becomes a favorite. And why would he have to throw the ball 30 to 35 times? Because they're down big, right? So I'm hoping that he stays in that, because if he only has to drop back 18 to 20 times in this game, how many times is he realistically going to get sacked? Maybe once, maybe twice, right?
Philly's Achilles heel is the running game, and if he doesn't have to pass that much, you're right, right?
That right. So I'm going with that recipe. So, but I agree with you. If it turns into the game you're talking about, then Philly's probably going to end up winning it. But I don't think it will.
And by the way, you mentioned 3 guys that are the key players for them: CMC, Deebo, and Kittle. All 3 of them are injury prone. They haven't been injured during this winning streak. I just saying, one of them gets hurt in the cold weather in Philadelphia. Last thing before we go to the other game, this is a little fun fact for you, DYK folks. Philadelphia is 12-0 when one player runs for 100 yards in the game. Whether it's the quarterback, because he can do it, or one of those running backs. Is they got 3 good running backs: Miles Sanders, Brown, and the other kid's name. 12-0.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right, man. Let's talk the other game. All right. You already mentioned it. You love the impressiveness of the KC win in Buffalo last week. I was completely shocked by the game. I'm with you. I couldn't believe they did it. Burrow, of course, is the coolest cat on earth. I get it. But their mouths, I think I'm gonna get them in trouble. I'm telling you right now, I got KC just because I think Mahomes is taking this personally. That's my reason. And I know they're 3-0 against Mahomes in the last calendar year, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? This is another one I've been back and forth on. So, and I even said, because by the way, G Money does like the Niners as well, straight out.
He likes Cincinnati.
And with the points. You like, by the way, your pick is, you picking Philly?
Yeah, I'm picking Philly.
And you're laying the points too, the 2.5?
I'm not even thinking about the points, but sure.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, and
I
then
think it's a 35-31 game.
All right. Okay. And then in this game, G Money took the Bengals, and of course the Bengals were starting.
This is the one I think 35-31. I think the other game was like 23-20.
Okay. All right. So in this game, the Bengals started off as favorites because of the question mark behind Mahomes and his ankle, right? As Mahomes started to practice during the week, the line shifted by 3. It was a 1-point underdog, right? The Chiefs were 1-point underdog at home. Now I think they're a 1.5-point favorite, right? Am I not mistaken? And you're right. Everything points to, and I said I'm with G Money. I'm going to take the Bengals, but you know what? After what you just said, I think I'm going to switch my pick right here in person, live on the show, because the streak's got to break at some point. I don't think they can keep winning. They can't keep beating the Chiefs forever. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And they've already done it 3 times. This game's in Arrowhead. Man, I just think Cincy's good though, man. They're good. I just, it's hard for me to pick against them, but I do like your thing about Mahomes on a mission. And he's not going to let it happen on his own, especially now that it's saying, oh, we're playing in Burrowhead. We're playing in Burrowhead, right?
And PB, you know, for years, because we have our fan, Casey Josh, who's a big Casey fan, and I've always disliked Patrick Mahomes just because of Josh. But I believe Mahomes has played his best quarterback this year because he's distributed the ball. And the years before, when Tyreek was there and Travis, those are the only 2 guys that ever touched the ball. Now he throws it to whoever is open. He's really playing quarterback for the first time, in my mind, true quarterback. And this is why I kind of like him this year.
Yeah, and let's talk about the one guy, really, I think that could make the difference in this game. You talked about the Bills not having Von Miller, and they could have won that game. Well, guess what? The Chiefs do have Chris Jones. And Chris Jones could end up making that play or two, strip sacking Burrow in a key moment that could weigh this more towards Kansas City. So, you know what? What the heck?
By the way, Chris Jones was the most impressive guy in their loss in the Super Bowl to Tampa Bay, right? He had a great game that night.
Yeah. So what the heck? I'm going to switch I'm going to take Kansas City. I'll lay the 1.5, whatever it is. So me and you are on Kansas City. G Money's on Cincinnati.
Here's a couple of things that made me think about this for sure for KC. KC's the number 1 offense in the league. Cincinnati, as great as they are with all those receivers and Cool Joe, they're only number 8 in the league in offense. KC's defense, who everybody says sucks, they're number 11. Cincinnati's number 16. But hold on to one thing. They're number 23 versus the pass, and KC's number 1 in the passing game. So that spells
great point.
And by the way, since he only has 30 sacks in the year, they don't rush the passer well. They're weak against the pass to start with. I hate to say it, but there's no convincing fact. And as much as I know you're going to hate to hear this, if Baltimore had Lamar, they would have beat Cincinnati. At the end of the day, since Baltimore outplayed Cincinnati in that playoff game, they had 336 yards of offense. Cincinnati was 236. So I don't know. Cincinnati's been on a great roll. I think they're going to maybe one day win a Super Bowl. I don't know. Or maybe Joe Burrow is Jim Kelly. Who knows? But this is not the year they get there, in my opinion. Streak ends.
You definitely swayed me. I'm on the same boat as you with this. I'm taking Kansas City as well.
All right, man. All right, we'll see what happens. Nice conversation. Nice show. Fans, tune in. Next week we'll recap all of this. All right, people. Talk to you later, PB. I was going to say P Money, but you're P Money if you're right.
See ya.